Good evening, and welcome to the 9th Essex District State Representative Candidates Debate for the upcoming November 6th election. I'm the moderator for this debate, Bill Carroll. Before the debate, lots were drawn to determine the order of the candidates. The candidates in debates are State Representative Donald Wong and Matthew CRESCENZO. Independent candidate Michael Collier was invited to participate in this debate, but he declined the invitation. The press panel for this evening is reporter Mark Sardella from the Wakefield Daily Item, and presenting questions for the Wakefield Observer is myself, a new role in these debates. All of the other papers in the district were invited to be on the panel, but declined participation. There are no opening statements in this evening's debate. In turn, a question will be asked of a candidate by the press panel. The candidate will have 2 minutes to respond to the question. Following the response, the remaining candidate will have the opportunity to present his or her 1-minute response to the same question. To allow for as many questions as possible in the time available while maintaining the ability for all to have a chance to respond, candidates should keep their answers short and to the point. Questions have not been provided to the candidates in advance. Questions must be relevant to the issues important to the town. Questions of a personal nature are not allowed. I guess that's for us. At the end of the debate, in turn, each candidate will present a 2-minute closing statement. The producer, David Watts Jr., requires the moderator to maintain strict compliance to the stated time limits in order to be able to have as many questions as possible for the press panel. So if I cut somebody off, it's not one way or the other. We just got to keep things moving. And according to the moderator, I will govern all of the conduct of the debate. We will begin now, and the first question is to Donald Wong from Mark Sardella. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't introduce Mark Sardella from the item. Okay, but not formally, Mark. Good evening. You have the first question for Donald Wong.
Would you ever support reducing the Massachusetts sales tax back to 5%?
Okay. Good evening. I would support reducing it to 5%. I think the more money that the residents of Massachusetts have in their pocket, the better. And I would like to say that, excuse me, I would like to say that by reducing it, residents would have a choice of how they spend their money.
Find creative ways to improve the cities and towns that are in the state. If people saw their tax dollars going to good use, maybe they wouldn't mind slightly higher taxes, but when you see the states of our roads and bridges, when you see that state aid is as low as it is right now, I don't think that higher taxes are what we want to see. The middle class are being squeezed. It's clear our current system isn't working. As it stands now, housing costs are through the roof. The child care can cost as much as a mortgage. Cost of living's on the rise, wages aren't going with it. You know, a trip to the movies or a baseball game, it takes a family $100 out of someone's pocket. So I'm not in favor of higher taxes at this time. You see people moving away because cost of living is so high right now. They're going to Western Mass, they're going to New Hampshire, and that's causing a loss of revenue for our cities and towns in the state. So we have to find ways to protect our working class and our small businesses. So I'm not in favor of raising taxes at this time.
Next question is to you, Matt. What would you do if elected to help combat the opioid crisis that has affected the 9th Essex District and region as a whole?
It's a really good question. Look, this opioid crisis has ravaged families for far too long. Now, there's been recent votes on it, but that's not an end to the work we have to do. We can't just talk about these things during an election season. Over the last 6 years, Saugus, Wakefield, and Lynn has seen 350 overdoses. That's one a week. We have to do more. We have to give our Attorney General greater flexibility to go after opioid manufacturers. We have to work to provide more treatment options to those addicted. That includes funding for community health centers, supporting rehabilitation and alternative sentencing programs, and acknowledging that addiction is a mental health issue, not a criminal one. I'll push towards implementing both school and patient-based education so that people are more informed on the risk and dangers of opioid abuse. I'll look to mandate prescription lengths to shorter periods of time from doctors. And I'll make sure that insurance companies cover in-treatment options for longer periods of time.
Donald.
We just heard today that the federal government is going to increase the money to the state to fight the opioid crisis. On House Bill 4742, it provides an additional set of tools to address the opioid crisis. Among the provisions included in the bill is increasing access to medication assistance for the treatments, exploring tools to reduce harm and saving lives, expanding prevention efforts, and addressing the high rate of conditions and substance abuse and mental abuse. Someone who receives treatment in an emergency room for the opioid overdose will now have the opportunity to begin treatment for their overdose and treatment for their additional before they leave the ER.
Thank you.
Over the last several years, school districts around the state have not been fully or promptly reimbursed under the state special education circuit breaker program. What can be done to ensure that cities and towns are promptly and fully reimbursed under that program?
Is this to me?
Yes, to Donald.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would just like to say that we have been working very hard on Chapter 70, and since 2012, as your state rep, I have increased Chapter 70 every year. But there's more to do. You know, we work with the MSBA, which is the Mass School Building Authorities, which helps pay for some of the school buildings that we have. But it's not just buildings. We have to work with teachers and have authorized and well-educated teachers and be up to date with everything.
Matt?
I have friends and family that have worked in public schools and work in public schools now. I went through the Saugus public school system, as did my brother and my father before me. The push for a new school started years ago, and that was finally good to finally see that happen. The current foundation formula was written in 1993. Teaching methods have changed drastically over the last 25 years. We've been talking about changing this formula for at least a decade. The House had a chance to update it this most recent legislative session, and they failed to do so. How many more studies need to be done? How many more votes? How much longer must the children of Massachusetts wait to see an improvement to their education? I know teachers, too many, that use Facebook, GoFundMe, Amazon wishlist to fund their classrooms. We have enough business people and lawyers telling our teachers how to do their jobs. It's time we start listening to them and fight to get them what they need every year. We need to address the needs of education as they change in our modern age. We need to ensure our future generations are being educated equally and be sure that we're doing our best to close this achievement gap. That starts by having more vocal leaders in the State House who are willing to push these tough issues through and get them done.
Questions for Matt. Portions of the 9th Essex district have seen a big construction boom of new development in recent years. If elected, what can you do as a state representative to help to bring attractive development into the district?
That's a great question. It's something that I hear a lot when I'm on the doors and talking to people. Look, there's a lack of economic diversity these days in our district. I'll always encourage locally owned businesses, those small mom and pop shops, but we have too many pizza places and hair salons. Coming from a background in technology, I'd like to see some different models that prepare us better for the future. We need to encourage these businesses to come here. So how do we do that? Well, we need to fix our roads and infrastructure. On Route 1, there's trash, trees, and grass in the median. There's potholes and cracks on our roads. So we start by making a community that's more inviting and safer. A police presence on roads where there's speeding, those repaired roads, a better education system that makes for more desirable job candidates. That's how we start creating an area and a district that will encourage businesses to come here.
Donald.
I would like to see, excuse me, I would like to see more local and state working together on development of property like on Route 1. Right now, Route 1 is going to have 5 housing development apartments, and that could bring up to 2,000 apartments. So the cars on Route 1 will be overabundance. You're going to have, if it's 2,000 apartments, you're going to have 4,000 cars. But getting back to MSBA, on schools, I just want to say that the state is providing $45 million more for early education and care facility. And myself, working with schools, I have brought robotics, archery, and myself, before being elected, I worked on Adopt a School, where we would get businesses to help the schools. Thank you.
Mark.
For Donald. There's a lot of confusion on the referendum questions, especially on question 1, which pertains to nurse staffing. Could you explain your position on that question 1?
Thank you very much. I would vote no on question 1 because I believe in less government regulations on the patient-to-nurse ratio. The reaction to nurses across the state to question number 1 appears to be mixed, and that is not a good thing for the patients or the profession. I would like to see more information connected to both sides working together. Like Maine, they just came to a compromise and agreement just the other day, and I would like to see us do the same.
Matt.
I spend time working at a health center. I'm close friends with several nurses now. I'm a yes on question 1. Mass hospitals are facing deteriorating patient conditions. There's more complications, there's readmissions, errors, longer hospital stays, and create real life-threatening risks. This will dramatically improve patient safety in Massachusetts by setting a safe limit on the number of patients assigned to a nurse at one time, while providing flexibility that allows nurses to adjust this limit based on specific patient needs. If you ask, just ask a nurse. An April 2010 survey, 8 out of 10 nurses, this was of all Massachusetts nurses, reported that hospital patients today are sicker than 10 years ago. 64% report injury and harm to patients due to understaffing. 90% report they don't have the time to properly comfort and care for the patients. We're all going to be in the hospital at some point in our lives, and we're all going to be wanting nurses that are well rested and ready to take care of us. And this measure saves just one life. It's worth passing.
Questions from Matt. A ballot question this November seeks to repeal the state law that prohibits discrimination against transgender people in public places such as restrooms or restaurants. Do you support or oppose this ballot question?
I'm a yes on question 3. As a veteran, not only did I serve to protect the rights of everyone, but I served with members of the LGBTQ+ community. And these individuals were just as willing to lay their lives on the line to protect our country and everyone in it. This is about guaranteeing the protections that some of us have to everyone. And if people, transgender or not, go into public spaces with the intent of committing a crime, they're still going to be prosecuted. There's still laws that prohibit this type of thing. A study came out 2 weeks ago that examined restroom crime reports in Massachusetts, and they found there was no increase in crime. There's no significant relationship in the number of crimes occurring. There's nothing that says that this is a bad thing to do. We need to make sure that everyone in Massachusetts is protected equally.
Donald?
I would vote yes on question 3 to keep in place the current law prohibiting discrimination on the basis of gender identification in public places. Initially, when the bill was introduced, I was thinking about my children and grandchildren, and I did not support it. But since it's been active, there has not been one incident of assault or invasion of privacy reported because of the passing of this law. So I support keeping the current law prohibiting discrimination on the basis of gender identification, and public places. Thank you.
Donald, would you ever support a vehicle miles traveled tax? In other words, taxing motorists on the basis of the number of miles traveled?
I would not support it. The reason why is people have different jobs, and if you are a salesperson and have to travel a lot, why should you be penalized for doing your job? The other thing is, if you have to drive your kids to school or vacations, why should you be penalized for that?
Matt?
No, Massachusetts is already a high tax state. Our current taxes, no one can really see where they're going. Again, our roads are in bad shape, our bridges, our public transportation. I think we need to start with better oversight and a better understanding of where our current tax dollars are going before we lay additional taxes on the residents of Massachusetts.
Next question. This is to Matt. The town of Saugus and the Conservation Law Foundation are appealing the Mass DEP's decision to approve a permit allowing Wheelabrator Saugus to fill in 2 valleys of its ash landfill, a ruling that the opponents maintain amounts to an expansion of the ash landfill. Do you support this legal challenge from the town and environmental organization? Why or why not?
When it comes to Wheelabrator, it's not as easy as saying we're going to get rid of it. Between its 60 full-time employees, how entrenched they are in the community, Wheelabrator's here and something we're going to have to work with. And while the plant and those close to it aren't in the district, they're still members of our community. They still have friends and family that live in our district, and they still contribute to our district through things like working and shopping. They deserve to have their voices heard. Some question this health impact. We know there's environmental impact with the toxic ash and the unlined landfill. But we have to work with Wheelabrator. Can we work together to provide more studies that will ease the minds of our residents? Can we reduce the environmental impact this plant has? Can we incentivize on-the-job training so that its employees are more prepared to move to the clean energy sector when that day comes? But if Wheelabrator wants to do more and be a part of this community, like their charity and town involvement suggests, they have to do more to provide answers when the cities and towns come looking for them. When you have 2 power issues in a matter of weeks and residents are up at 2 a.m. wondering what's going on, we need more than a Facebook post and a letter to explain that situation. If elected, I look forward to working with Wheelabrator to address the concerns of our nearby residents and to improve the trust that the community currently doesn't have in Wheelabrator.
Donald?
Do you mind repeating the question?
Yeah. The town of Saugus and the Conservation Law Foundation are appealing Mass DEP's decision to approve a permit allowing Wheelabrator Saugus to fill in 2 valleys of its ash landfill, a ruling that opponents maintain amounts to an expansion of the ash landfill. Do you support the legal challenge from the town and the environmental organization? Why or why not?
First of all, the state already has approved it. But I think more important, as of today, I don't think there's any local government elected official have worked with or talked with Wheelabrator. I think that the local government should be talking with Wheelabrator and working together and compromise and make a better living condition for all of Saugus.
Mark?
Would you ever support making Massachusetts a sanctuary state?
I agree with the governor right now. I would not make the state a sanctuary state. The governor right now says that he would allow each town and city to either be sanctuary city or town or not. I'm just worried about the higher visibility of crime, because I talked to the chief of police both in my community, 3 districts, and Wakefield and Saugus said they're against sanctuary towns, and I would go with them. Thank you.
Matt?
Look, the government is democratic, and its a job as state rep is to fight for the will of the people. There's, I think, 11 or 13 sanctuary cities in Massachusetts. So if Saugus or Wakefield or Lynn wanted to go that way, then it's the job of the state rep to assist in that matter, but not in favor of it, and I agree with Representative Wong on this one.
Am I up now? Okay, this is from Matt. What do you consider to be the biggest problem facing the 9th Essex District, and what would you do if elected to address it?
Route 1 traffic. We need to make getting in and out of the district and driving on Route 1 less time consuming and less stressful. That means exploring new technologies like ramp metering, which controls the frequency that vehicles enter the flow of the traffic on the highway. In Minnesota, they did this and found it led to a 7% reduction in traffic volume. We need to focus on rail linking projects that connect the Commonwealth. This contributes to economic and housing growth and reduction of interstate traffic through what's known as transit-oriented development. We need to provide adequate funding to improve our service and reliability on our aging transit system. This isn't just for tracks and subway cars, but for hidden infrastructure as well. And this should also include making MBTA fully ADA accessible.
Donald?
Okay. Again, I would think that Route 1 is going to be a big problem now and in the future. Again, I would like to see local government and federal government working together. Also, looking at what they put on Route 1. Again, like I said earlier, they have maybe 4 or 5 projects of building housing and apartments there. And I think that instead they should be putting businesses that will not hurt the infrastructure of our community.
You're up.
As you talk to people around the district, what have you found to be their highest priorities?
Again, it was Route 1, but some of it was about the schools also. We're working with the MSBA to build the new schools. But again, we have to look at what we're building other than new schools. I'm looking at the infrastructure of Saugus, where they're building 5 apartment projects, and they're building a school that is only for the amount of people that are there now. When you have 5 apartment projects going up with maybe 2,000 residents, some of them are going to have kids, and it's going to hurt the infrastructure again of the school. It might be overcrowded before it's even done.
Matt?
The things I hear, which have helped me decide my top priorities, are the opioid crisis. At this point, I'm more surprised when I hear someone that doesn't know someone that was personally affected in one way, shape, or form. It's been hurting our district for far too long. I'll focus on pushing the House to finally fix our Chapter 70 education funding formula, which again has just been talked about for far too long. And I'll push for our district to receive its fair share in state aid, because the district remains a net giver, but we're not seeing that return. So we need to finally work on improving our roads in this terrible traffic situation that we see every day.
Next question is for Matt. Should lawmakers play a role in encouraging the growth of green businesses in the state? And if so, how or what would you do to increase or encourage that growth if you were elected?
Yes, they should. We need to incentivize people to switch to more clean energy products and technologies for the home. We provide tax breaks and greater access to and for these items. If more people can afford solar panels, or more people can afford an electric vehicle, more people are going to buy them. If we make easier access to vehicle charging stations, more people will be willing to make that step. It's about incentivizing people, businesses, and local governments to make that change, because we can't deny climate change anymore. We've seen these intense storms, South Carolina most recently. It's time we start doing our best to incentivize people and businesses and push for cleaner energy.
Donald?
Okay. Can you repeat that one more time? Thank you.
Yeah. Should lawmakers play a role in encouraging the growth of green businesses in the state? And if so, what would you do to encourage that growth if you were elected?
Okay. Of course, government, and I think everyone should be looking at a greener state. But what we should be doing is giving more incentives to businesses and residents, like electric cars, and then even with businesses to have more recycling. And education is very important. Educating the public on recycling. You know, there was a study that showed that trash, it costs less than recycling now. Because what's happening now is when people recycle, they're recycling the wrong things in the bin. And that's costing us money because it ends up in the trash. So a lot of people don't know like things like pizza box. They don't supposed to be going into recycling. You see it's cardboard, but if there's food attached to it, it can't be recycled.
Mark?
Single-family homes in this area are out of reach for a lot of families. How do we create more affordable housing?
First of all, I would love to see people get incentive to have in-law apartments, because to have your parents living with you, it would cost the state less money to put them up in homes and hospitals and things like that. So I think that by having in-law apartments, and it has to be in-law apartments, not renting out to, just renting out for residents, I think they should get tax incentives. But working with the residents and educating them, again, that's the main thing.
Matt?
Can you repeat the question?
Sure.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Single-family homes in this area are out of reach for a lot of families. How do we create more affordable housing?
We have to incentivize towns and cities to reach their 10% affordable housing quota. I think even Saugus, most of the towns and cities aren't, they're at 7%. Again, as I mentioned earlier, housing costs are up to 75% the national average in this area. We have to make sure we protect our veterans and elderly from rising property taxes so that they're able to retire with dignity in the communities that they help build. Again, it starts with incentivizing local towns and communities, giving property tax breaks to those that can't afford it or can't afford higher taxes. And we just need to be more vocal at the State House. We need leaders that are willing to stand up and fight for what's right. If we keep talking about these same things over and over and over again, and there's a reason for that. It's because our leaders aren't getting the job done. It starts by being willing to speak up, discuss the issues in the State House, and not go home until it's solved.
Donald?
Okay, and housing?
Have you already gone? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, so
Yes.
we're up to Matt. Okay, I'm sorry.
No problem.
Matt, in communities such as Saugus, many officials are frustrated with a formula that they feel unfairly charges the town more per student than other communities to enroll students at vocational schools. Do you have any problems with the existing formula? If so, what would you do if elected to address this issue?
I have a problem with the formula because when I talk to people in Saugus, a lot of them don't understand it. They don't understand why they're paying more, why Saugus is paying more per pupil. There's the talks of a new vocational school, but we're not hearing how much that's going to cost our town. How do you fix it? You start by working together. You start by getting quality people who know what they're talking about. Politicians aren't supposed to know everything. It's about finding the people that are educated in those areas and working with them and working together with other legislatures and the local towns and communities to find a solution that works for everybody.
Donald?
Okay. On the vocational school, there is a formula, but it's voted on by the board at the vocational school at each district. And it's going to be very hard to get people on the board that are paying less than we are to say that they want to pay more. So I think that we should really look at what the board is and who is on the board to make it more fair. And then going back to housing, I just want to say that the House has put $1.8 billion into new capital spending for affordable housing for next year. We're also putting $650 million for public housing. So those are some of the things that we're doing at the State House now for next year.
We're going to flip now so that we ask different questions, which I pre-anticipated a moment ago. So Donald, this question is to you. What would you do if elected to stimulate jobs in Massachusetts and prevent successful companies from leaving the state?
It's just like what we did with GE. We gave them tax incentives. But not only that, is what I'm doing now is I'm trying to get foreign companies to come here. One of the companies that came was a Chinese company that are building our trains right now. And where did we locate them? In Springfield, where the unemployment is so high. We're bringing a company to build here, employ people in Springfield, so that once we have people employed, they start paying taxes also. So if we can get more companies, and they don't have to be foreign, they could be any company within the US. Give them incentives to be here. By being here, they build, we employ people. It'll help our economy. And that's the main thing is we have to be business friendly. And that's the only way that we're going to build our economy and get people's jobs.
Matt?
Yeah, that's great. And obviously, anytime you can get more people employed in the Commonwealth, that's a good thing. But as a state rep, you have to worry about your district. And if it's not helping our district, you're not doing your job. And that starts, like I said a little while ago, we need to make a community that's more inviting and safer. Nobody's going to want to come to our community and build a business if we don't have proper education or our students are leaving. Nobody's going to want to come build a community if their storefront's going to be on the mess that's Route 1 right now. Nobody's going to want to build businesses in here and try to employ people if you have to sit in traffic for an hour and a half to go a quarter mile. Again, it starts by incentivizing businesses to come to this area by advocating for state aid to improve our district. That's the only way we're going to start seeing businesses come into our district and stay.
And to Matt.
Yeah, you go to Matt now.
How would this district benefit from you being elected?
That's a good question. Look, I've held positions of leadership throughout my entire military career. I've led soldiers in basic training and my job training. I was leading soldiers at 19 and 20 years old in South Korea. I was a supervisor in Louisiana, and I was a communications expert for a security team in Afghanistan. I've been personally responsible for millions of dollars worth of equipment and technology, some of it related to national security. I've had lives in my hand and had to prepare to literally take a bullet for somebody on a daily basis. I had to make split-second decisions where, if I was wrong, it could have cost somebody their life. I volunteer in our community and in our district. I spend time with the people I want to represent, and I talk to them, and I get to know them, and I get to learn how our government can best assist them. The district and this community, okay, it's back. The district and our community benefits from me as their representative because I'm a proven leader who's had to make tough decisions with lives on the line and always been successful in doing that.
Donald?
The same question.
Yeah.
I just want to say that my upbringing with my parents has been always to help and give back to the community. In saying that, I have been elected in town meeting, selectman chair 2 terms, and now state rep. And as a state rep for the 8 years, I have had 100% attendance and voting record. I'm a business owner, and I have worked with nonprofit while I'm elected and before I was elected. I was on the Business Education Collaborative, Taste of Education, and I was chairman of Adopt a School, where we got businesses to help schools with things that were not in their budget. Giving back is something that I learned from my parents. And I'll always do that. And we're looking at the future. I'm looking at the future because I have children and grandchildren. I'm looking at what's best for them and us. Thank you.
Donald, question. Illegal immigration is a hot topic that has generated quite a bit of debate across the country. Would you like to see immigration, what would you like to see immigration measures be taken in Massachusetts, and how would you implement those?
Immigration, I think we have to restructure it, but it has to be restructured at the federal level. If I was to restructure something at the federal level, I would give businesses 6-month amnesty. If they have an unregistered or illegal immigrant working for them, they should be registering for working papers. Once they have working papers, they start paying taxes. And working papers don't mean that they're gonna live here. There's some immigrants that wanna make money and send it home to their families, and then go back and live a better life once they have the money. So I think that immigration, the federal law should change to make it easier. Right now, myself as a restaurateur, when I want a cook to come over from China, it takes me 5 years, and I have to put up $5,000. This is what it costs. So if we made it easier, maybe they wouldn't be coming here illegally. Because the most important thing is, when my grandparents came over, we had Ellis Island. And when you went to Ellis Island, you had to have a 100% health certificate to get off. Right now, with the illegal immigrants, there's no check and balance. That's why polio is going up. You know, hepatitis C, all these diseases are going up because we don't have check and balances. You know, but we have to make it easier and more friendly. Thank you.
First off, polio is probably going up because we have too many people that are into anti-vax these days. We're all the descendants of immigrants. I'm a descendant of Italian immigrants myself. In fact, I live in my great-grandparents' home. I certainly support legal immigration. We do have to do a better job of incentivizing legal immigration. My best friend, since I was 10 years old, he married someone from his home country in Bosnia, and the efforts to get her to become a legal citizen are absurd. Thousands and thousands of dollars, years and years of waiting. We need to do better. We need to that starts by having a welcoming community, one that'll educate everybody, one that will make sure that everyone can become a contributing member of society with a good job, with a good education, pay their taxes. It starts by incentivizing. And yes, like Representative Wong says, it does start at the federal level, but there's things that we can do to improve it here at the state level, and we need to have the courage to do that. Thank you.
Mark?
There have been calls to revise the state seal due to its depiction of Native Americans and as well as its inclusion of a sword. Do you find the state seal offensive, and would you support changing it?
This is actually the first I'm hearing about this. I don't find it offensive, but just hearing about this, I would like to learn a little bit more about it and to maybe talk to people who see something differently that might be offended by it, but I don't have a problem with it, and I don't see changing it at this time.
Donald?
I do not see why we should be changing it. This is a symbol of the Native Indians that we respect, and we want to give them an honor to be a symbol. We're not defacing them or making them look bad. And getting back to working with other districts, trying to save them money by bringing jobs and everything there. Well, when we bring jobs to other districts, it's also helping us. Because if the state has paid less money to those districts, they can bring more money to our districts. So we have to, again, work together as a Commonwealth for the better of the Commonwealth. Thank you.
Donald, both Saugus and Wakefield have Chapter 40B projects in the pipeline. Do you support this legislation that allows developers to get around zoning restrictions as long as they designate a percentage of the housing units as affordable units? Why or why not?
Okay. First of all, we're talking about percentage. Am I right?
Yes.
Okay.
40B.
40B. I think that there should be a certain percentage, especially if we're below the percentage that is required by the state. But in saying so, I think that the builder of these apartments should be working with the local government. And that's the main thing, is working with local government, and then the local government working with state.
Can you repeat that?
Yeah. Both Saugus and Wakefield have Chapter 40B projects in the pipeline. Do you support this legislation that allows developers to get around local zoning restrictions as long as they designate a percentage of the housing units as affordable? Why or why not?
Yeah, something I've talked about tonight and something we're all aware of is the cost of living and how much it costs to buy a house, how much rent costs in this area. So having affordable housing quotas is a good thing. Ensuring that these developers actually reach those quotas. I've heard stories of other developments in Saugus, even going back a decade or more, where they say that they're going to have this amount percentage, and then, oh, no, we changed our mind. So we have to do more to ensure that developers hold true to their promises, and that we continue to protect the most vulnerable populations. That's the elderly, the veterans, low-income families who rely on affordable housing in order to have shelter. So I do support making sure that we reach our quotas.
The legislature is an easy target for a lot of people, in part because they believe that lawmakers don't do a lot. Matt, from your perspective as a candidate, could you list some of the ways that you would like to prove them wrong? And maybe Donald, maybe you could list some of the accomplishments.
What do you mean by prove wrong?
Well, what kinds of things would you do to kind of dispel the image of a legislature that doesn't do much?
Got it. Look, our government needs to be more transparent and efficient. We need better oversight and accessible information so we know where our tax dollars are going. All legislative votes should be published and made easily accessible. This includes committee votes. There should be more openness when the legislature is in session and when they're behind closed-door meetings, so we know what our government's discussing, who's speaking for or against the people, and who's doing their job and who isn't. And if the legislature continuously votes against this transparency, we need to have legislators who are willing to stand up, to go around that decision, tell us how they voted and why. And if elected, I promise to make my voting record, complete with explanation, easily available to anyone and everyone, because we owe that to the people we represent.
Donald.
Okay. The voting records are already out to the public. You can look them up. And I just want to say that being on Ways and Means, I have gone across the state to listen to what people have to say. And some people might say that there was a vote on a pay raise last year. I voted against the pay raise. And when it was my turn, because I was on financial service, I was the forerunner, they said I would have to take the $30,000. In which case I said, put me on a different committee. I don't want the raise because I voted against the raise. This is what we have to bring people back into politics that are not out for themselves, but here for the people here and nothing else. Thank you.
Am I next now? My question to Donald. Let me ask first to Donald and then to Matt. How do you plan or how have you planned to work with each of the local town governments within your district? And in other words, if you can skip past all the platitudes of I'd work closer, this kind of stuff, how would you work with, say, the Board of Selectmen, in our case, the Town Council? How would you work with, if you have school committees? What specifically do you intend to do, if elected, to increase your actual interaction with the local governments? Donald?
Myself?
Yeah.
Okay. Myself, I have worked closely with Paul Broder, who has the other part of Wakefield, and we do have meetings with the town manager, Steve Mayo, who was elected by the the selectmen in Wakefield. And we have done things where he would tell us what he needs from the state. And we, in turn, bipartisan, we would work together to get what the towns need. Like just this year, we're getting $100,000 for the cultural center. And money for safety building. By working together, that's how we get things done. Also with Lynn, the Lynn delegation, state delegation, because Mayor McGee used to be the senator. So we have a working relation already. So we can always go and knock on his door as a delegation, because it's better that we all work together, both across the aisle. And we have gotten quite a few things for Lynn by working together. And that's what you have to do.
I have close relationships with some Wakefield town councilors, Sauger selectmen. I know all of our state delegation, including the representation in Lynn, school committees. It starts by just listening to them. Whether that's coffee or lunch or a phone call, is sitting down with them in groups and individuals and listening to them and what they need to be successful in their job. So it is working together, but what works for one person might not work for another. It's the same way when you're leading soldiers. One soldier, when you listen, you need to give this type of attention or listen to him this way or that way. Another soldier, she needs this type of attention. So you need to learn the personalities, develop those personal relationships, and just sit down and listen to them. Listen to them and just hear what they need so that we can get this job done.
Matt, or Mark?
What can the state do to address the ever-rising costs of health care?
Oh, me? I'm used to you asking him. Look, we have to work with insurance companies. We have to, I think of, it's union, the National Grid lockout, they just had their health insurance taken away. So we have to find ways when that happens to protect everybody, Medicaid, Medicare, greater labor representation on the boards for people that advocate for health care for the state. It just starts, again, it's about getting up to the State House, being vocal, listening to those that are educated in that area, developing a plan and executing the plan, not just talking about it during election season, not just sitting on it or doing nothing, being vocal, talking to the State House, work together, actually get something done instead of just talking about it or talking about something from 6 years ago.
Thank you. Healthcare is very important because the baby boomers are getting older. And one thing I think we should be looking at is having East meet West, some of the holistic care that we have. I teach Tai Chi in Chinatown, and I do seminars. And with just the simple exercise of Tai Chi, our seniors are getting better balance, better walking ability. This is what we have to do. By combining it, get the best of both worlds and bring down the cost of health care. We have to have an open eye and look at alternatives.
Okay, at the risk of causing trouble here, which I like to do, What I'd like to ask you both is, without getting into personalities, you two have been campaigning each other, I imagine, for months now. You know each other's positions. How do you differ, and what are your positions that Matt has that you differ with, and why should your positions be more persuasive to voters? Policy-wise. Yeah.
Okay. Policy-wise, I think that we sometimes have similar agendas. But the thing unique with me is I have been in the State House, and I have built friendship and a good foundation to get things done. Bipartisan. I have crossed the aisle. One thing that my record shows that I have attended every single meeting and had a 100% voting record, but at the same time, I talked to both Republicans and Democrats and say, you know, if you can't be there for the bill, and if I agree with the bill, I'll be there to help push it through. And that's how we work together and get bills done. And, you know, I'm learning more about Matt right now, and it's good. It's good that we all have our own opinions and how we can work together after this.
How would you draw a distinction between your policies and Donald's, who has a record?
I do think that Representative Wong and I have a lot in common. We both love our community. We're both sincere. We both want the best for everyone. I commend Representative Wong on his voting record, but that's just part of the job. And frankly, we should expect our representatives to show up and represent us at every vote. But showing up's not enough. I don't know anyone that has a job where they get rewarded just for showing up. We need to talk about the hard issues. We need to write legislation. We need to be transparent about how we voted on everything, even the stuff that people might agree with. Being friends with people in the legislature is great. But if I can work with somebody in the military who 10 minutes ago we just got into an argument and I have to trust them with my life, I can work with the legislator that I might not always agree with. At the end of the day, you have 40,000 bosses behind your back, and you have a responsibility to them and their interests. If you have a situation where going against your friend in the State House is beneficial to the people of this district, you need to be prepared to make that decision, and we need someone represent us who we can trust to do that.
Question is to Matt. This is the last question, okay? Just so you know.
A little earlier, we addressed the vocational school formula. Could you talk a little bit about the Chapter 70 formula? Do you think we'll ever see changes to that formula that would help the district?
I hope so. Look, this was, again, it was written in 1993, 25 years ago. So a lot's changed since then. We've had legislators promise to change this for over a decade. And they talk about during election season, and they can't get it done. It's been voted on 4 times in some way, shape, or form. The Senate passed this in the most recent legislative session, and the House couldn't close the deal. And even then, it only did 2 out of the 4 recommended fixes that the Foundation Budget Commission recommended. We should want all of our students to be educated so they can properly contribute to a society. A better educated population benefits everyone. I'd like to think that'll eventually get done, but we need legislators in there that have the intestinal fortitude to stand up and push these things through, and they're not going to get done. It didn't get done because people didn't want to stay past midnight. If you have to meet more people, that's a situation where maybe one more representative, if they were willing to stand up and say, no, we're not going home till we vote this, maybe we wouldn't be talking about how we failed to do that. That's where it starts. More vocal legislators who are willing to fight for everybody in this district, not just on election season, not just when people are watching, but all the time.
Chapter 70 is just part of it. The other thing that we fight for are grants and building a network. That's why I brought robotics and archery to our schools. Robotics, I brought network by working as a businessman. I brought Dean Kamen, who's the inventor of the Segway. He came down to Saugus to help us with the robotics that I brought. And that was money that we got from the state, not counting Chapter 70. And that's what we have to do. We got to look outside the box. We get what we get, but then we have to fight for more. Thank you.
Okay, gentlemen, what we're going to do here is we're going to have closing statements. You won the toss. You want to go first or second?
I'll go second, please.
Okay, that's what I figured. All right, Matt, you've got 2 minutes here for your closing statement.
Thank you to WCAT for hosting, Representative Wong for attending, those here watching at home for a great evening. My opponent may say that I'm young or inexperienced. And while I may not be as experienced in politics as my opponent, I am experienced in making tough choices. I am experienced in listening to my neighbors and hearing what they go through every day. I am experienced enough to know that the current system isn't working. I know what it's like to choose between a healthy meal or a tank of gas. I know what it's like to go to work sick because you can't afford to take a day off. I know how it feels to look at your paycheck and see it taxed and wonder where your hard-earned money's going. I know the frustration of being ignored by your government and those who are supposed to represent us. I know because I've lived it. This upcoming election is about old versus new. It's about status quo versus change. You have a choice between the same broken roads, the same Route 1 traffic, and the same lack of transparency, or new leadership with the courage and conviction to let you know where he stands at all times. There's a growing rift between our leaders and the public they are meant to serve. It's time we fix that. Now, some may say the system is too big to change, but we are the system. And we change it by getting new leaders elected who are willing to roll their sleeves up and get to work fighting for you every day. My name is Matthew CRESCENZO, and I'll be out there working for you and listening to you, and I'm asking for your vote and support on Tuesday, November 6th. Thank you.
Donald?
Okay. I would like to thank my opponents for their willingness to run for state office, and WCAT and all those responsible for this debate. First of all, I say my working habits are from my parents. They taught me how to work. I have worked all my life. This evening, I'm proud to share with you some of the recent accomplishments in the State House. We have increased Chapter 70, Chapter 90, unrestricted local aid, totaling nearly $197 million for Lynn, Saugus, and Wakefield. Compromise legislation on paid family leave. We have made it the holiday sale tax to be automatic every year now, and minimum wage. The expansion of medication and treatment of the opiate users. Property tax exemption for qualified seniors. We're just awaiting for passage in the Senate. Advocate for passage of a bill to help individuals with Alzheimer's disease and dementia and their families. Protecting youth from the health risks of nicotine and vaping products. Equity bills for women's right for pregnancy workers and disability insurance equity. Sponsored and supported veteran benefit rights, appreciation, validation, and enforcement. Increased police training to keep our streets and residents safe. Support and promote environment and natural resource protection. Invested in recreation, including DCR, reservation, forests, parks, river, wetland, ponds, streams, and electric vehicle incentives. I have worked hard the last 8 years in building relationships on both sides of the aisle. You are my eyes and ears in this district, and I need you to use your input to make our community a better place to live. I have brought millions of dollars back to our communities. Please vote for me on Tuesday, November 6th. I would be privileged and continue to serve as your state rep. And thank you very much.
I'd like to thank both the candidates, not only for your time tonight, but of course for entering the political ring, which is always admirable, and I know the time that it takes. I'd like to thank Mark for his usual fine job of coming up with questions, and which we almost ran out of. And I'd also, as always, like to thank WCAT. They do a phenomenal job. It's a first-class operation that they do on anything they seek to endeavor here in the community to publicize, televise, et cetera. Like particularly David Watts Jr., who does a great job with these debates. The only thing I can say to those of you at home is it's essential that you get out and vote on November 6th. It's not your right, it's your responsibility. So good night and thank you.
Thank you.